what I got. Time to talk about this. Hey everyone, welcome to my first really official, but we've been doing a lot of videos on the new rules of Warhammer 40k 8th edition. As always, my name is Jay, and this one I'll be going over the actual rules from the rulebook. We finally get to go over the actual rules in the settings that they're no more like hints. It's actually the rules. Now, I got this rulebook, and I got it from the starter set. You actually have a full hard copy rulebook from the starter set. That's really awesome. And what I'm going to say is that the rules are very streamlined, very, very streamlined in this edition. The appendix is only like one page of, the index is only one page of words. So, very, very streamlined rules in this edition, as we know, because obviously they've removed all the formations from all the codices. Now there's just certain attachments. There's going to be a lot less randomness. No more scatter die, no more flamer templates, no more templates in general. From now on, it's just you get to choose, like for reserves, you just get to choose what turn that you want them to come on at the end of the movement phase. But you have to put at least half of your models, or half of your squad units on the table at the beginning of the game. And I'm pretty certain, let's debate about this, people, but I'm pretty certain that includes drop pods. You have to put at least half your models half your units on the table. So even if you're running a drop pod heavy army, you have to start with a bunch of them on the table. So you can't do that, because otherwise that'd be so powerful. And drop pods, obviously, everything got much more expensive because of these abilities that you get to choose which turn you come on, and you can place them now on the table because there's no scatter die. You just have to place them so that they're 9 inches away from everyone else. So pretty craziness. So let's go over some of the rules that obviously have gone into change with Warhammer 40k 8th edition that we haven't really covered in too much detail in the previous videos. Now, obviously, there's multiple types of games. Like there's open play, where you just basically put models on the table and have fun. Narrated play. I'm going to focus more on the actual structured play styles, because that's where I play my games. Now, obviously, there were some changes to the phases. The movement phase now, obviously, as I discussed in previous videos, now there's no set amount of movement per unit type. Right now, it's just like Orc Boys, 5 inches. Hormigons, 8 inches, for example. Like each squad is given its own movement characteristic in its profile. They've removed initiative, which we'll talk about that later. And and they've done some things. So it's interesting. It's interesting. Now whoever assaults goes first. The assault phase is very different. The deployment is very different. So let's go over all these things in this video. It's going to be a long one, but we're going to go over a bunch of rules, and everyone's going to be happy. That's what it's about. So, as always, you have to move, but you can't be more than less than an inch away from your opponent. Now, the psychic phase is where things got very different in this edition. It's no more rolling a bunch of die, 4-ups count as benefits, with a lot of abuse. Now it's simply each psychic test has a value that you have to roll over with 2d6, right? And pretty much any psyker knows smite. And they are what's called mortal wounds. Now, mortal wounds are no saves of any kind allowed. They just take a wound. So it's pretty nasty. Smite is the default psychic power known by pretty much every psyker unless they specify otherwise. Smite is a warp charge value of 5. So if you roll 2d6, you have to roll higher than 5. If manifested, the closest visible enemy unit within 18 inches psyker suffers d3 mortal wounds. If the result of the psychic test is more than 10, it suffers d6 mortal wounds. So that's it. So first you choose your psyker. Now each psyker, this is the thing. Now it's different phases, and they very much, put parts of each phase. So the psychic sequences. Number 1, choose psyker and power. Number 2, make psychic tests. 3, enemy takes deny the witch if they have a psyker. Number 4, resolve psychic power. So first one, you choose a psyker. Some models are known as being psychers, obviously. The psychic, psychers can manifest their abilities and attempt to deny other enemies, powers. And it's detailed on their data sheet, how many they can manifest per turn or how many they can try to deny. Most of them is 1. Some of them's 2, some of them's 3. I think one of them or 2 of them may be 4. So those psychers, like a Hive Tyrant, for example, can manifest up to like a certain number of powers, and like I know the Swarm Lord can manifest up to 2 powers per turn, and also try to deny the Witch 2 times. But we're going over these in future videos. I'm going to go over all the armies, that, especially the ones I play at the beginning, and then I'll cover all the armies over the next like week and a half about each one, and I'll do as many as I can, because there's going to be a lot of armies and a lot of reviews out there as well with this information. So number 2, so you've chosen your power, you've chosen your Psyker, roll your Psychic test. You roll 2 dice, and you're trying to roll equal to or greater than the required number to manifest the power. If you do, awesome. Perils is double 6s, double 1s, and it's gotten nasty. If you roll a double 1 or double 6 when trying to manifest the power, the Psyker suffers D3 mortal wounds, so no saves of any kind. Ouch. D3. It could really blow off your Psyker's head quickly. Furthermore, if the Psyker is slain by Perils in the Warp, they've actually corrected this from previous editions. This is good. If he's slain, if the Psyker is slain while casting the power does not go off, counts as failed, and he dies, and this is nasty. The manifest automatically fails, and each unit within 6 inches immediately suffers D3 mortal wounds. Ouch. So Grey Knights, that is going to be really brutal. Grey Knight players, ooh. Especially most armies, but Grey Knights especially because they are low in models and they mortal wounds suck. So Deny the Witch tests. Only Psychers can now do Deny the Witch. So armies like Necrons and Orcs, if they normally run, but Necron Sisters, you're in trouble, unfortunately, for psychic powers. It means that there's going to be limited numbers of denies, limited numbers of casting. It's going to make it much more streamlined of a turn. Not this like crazy casting more powers, then casting more powers, then casting more powers turns. And then you resolve the psychic power if it's not denied. Oh wait, sorry, but for Deny the Witch, to deny the Witch, if let's say you cast a psychic power, I have to roll 2 dice, and my number has to be, I think, greater. Does it have equal to or greater? Greater. So if you like roll psychic power and you roll 2 dice equals 7, I have to roll 8 or higher to deny that witch. I get 1 chance to do it. All right. Next is the shooting phase. Now there have been changes to the shooting phase, which I'll go over the weapon types later, and one's kind of confusing me about assault weapons. Maybe they'll specify it later, but it kind of sounds like anybody can assault after shooting any weapon. I don't know. I'm going to maybe clarify later. I've read this through a couple times. So the shooting phase, of course, you shoot each unit to shoot with. Now, if you are starting your turn, the shooting phase closer than an inch away, you can only fire pistols. If you're closer than an inch away from your closest opponent model. Choose targets, makes sense. Now, obviously, you shoot characters. Now, characters can't join squads. So characters can only be shot if they're the closest model in line of sight to your squad. Make to hit rolls. Now, to hit rolls are now standard according to their weapon profile. However, there are modifiers, like if it's a heavy weapon and you moved, it's -1. If it's an assault weapon you moved, it's -1 apparently. Things like that. If you're shooting a moving target or something, it's -1, something like that. I don't think that one applies. Maybe that one's one I misread. You choose your targets. Models cannot target enemy units that are within 1 inch of friendly models. The risk of hitting your own troops is too great. Choose ranged weapon, and then the number of attacks. Each time a model shoots a ranged weapon, it will make a number of attacks. You roll 1 dice for each, of course, attack being made. And then, of course, there's the change to the weapon stats, which we'll go over after. So as I said, characters can't join squads anymore. That's a big change. But you can't target them unless they're the closest. So you can guard your characters. Yeah. Now, there are weapon types. But in this one, there aren't that many weapon types. There's only 5. Assault, heavy, rapid fire, grenade, and pistol. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is the difference between assault and heavy. Maybe it's later in the assault phase. We'll see. So assault weapons fire so rapidly they can, a model with assault weapon can fire it even if it advanced earlier that turn. But now advancing is in the movement phase. I should go back a little bit to the movement phase. Moving is now When you pick a unit to move in the movement phase, you declare that it will advance. Roll a dice and add the result to the move characteristic of all models in that unit. Oh, that's right, it's run. Oh, I see, that's the difference. That makes sense. So assault weapons can shoot even if you run. Wow, that's crazy. Go Tyranids and Orcs. I like that. Okay. Wow, that's good. Sorry, I finally clicked into what I'm going on. So basically, you move, and if you're and there's falling back now. Obviously, you can step out of combat, and your opponent, you can shoot your opponent to death. Crazy stuff. So that's the difference. Okay, so even if you run, you can shoot an assault weapon, but it's -1 to your ballistic skill, essentially. So -1 to hit. Heavies, if you move, it's -1 to hit. Rapid fire, you get twice as many shots from half range. Grenades. Each time a unit shoots, a single model in the unit that is equipped with grenades may throw one instead of firing at another weapon. And then there's pistols. Pistols. A model can fire a pistol even if there are enemy units within 1 inch of its own unit, but it must target the closest enemy unit. In such circumstances, the model can shoot its pistol even if other friendly units are within 1 inch of the same enemy unit. Cool. Each time a model equipped with both a pistol and another weapon, and another type of ranged weapon, i.e. a pistol and a rapid-fire weapon, shoots, it can either shoot with its pistol or with all of its other weapons. Can't do both. Makes sense. Yeah. And so, next, of course, with the shooting, you have to resolve the hits, resolve the attacks. You do the hit roll first, and it's a set amount minus any modifiers, for example. But now it's to wounds have changed. This is where it's quite interesting. So the wound roll now is obviously, if your strength of your weapon is equal to the toughness of your opponent that you're shooting at, 4s. That's where it stays normal. Now, this is where it deviates greatly. If the strength of your weapon is twice as much or more than the toughness value of your opponent, so it used to be just, if it was 2 higher, you're hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. Otherwise, you're wounding on 3s. So let's take a toughness 4 Space Marine. Right? Toughness 4 Space Marine. A strength 4 weapon wounds it on 4s. A strength 5 weapon, a strength 6 weapon, and a strength 7 weapon wound on 3s. A strength 8, 9, and 10 weapon wound on 2s. There you go. If your strength is lower than the toughness value, it's a 5 up, but if it's less than half, it's half or less than the toughness, it's a 6. So once again, a toughness 4 Space Marine, strength 3 wounds on 5s, strength 2 wounds on 6s, strength 1 wounds on 6s. Cool. Anybody can wound anyone in this game. And obviously a big change to this, which we've discussed in previous videos, is now all vehicles have wounds, and there are tons of wounds involved in this edition of Warhammer 40k 8th edition. So it's going to be fun keeping track of all the wounds in all the turns and everything. Now you have to allocate the wounds. Now this is where it changes as well. This is a huge change. It used to be closest, that cinematic feel. But now it's just like, if an attack successfully wounds the target, the player commanding the target unit allocates the wound to any model in the unit. The chosen model does not have to be within range or visible to the attacking unit. Huge change now. Wound allocation abuse is back, my friends. Because if you shoot and my closest guy is a knob in an orc squad, you're not killing that knob. I'm putting every wound as far away from that knob as possible. If the model in the target unit has already lost any wounds, the damage must be allocated to that model. So there you go. So if it was preventing the giant amount of wound allocation. So you could just choose, but that's good. Okay, so not as crazy wound allocation as I was thinking, but you can still do it. It just, you can prevent your dudes from dying. So that's good. You just stack it on the weaker dudes ahead of time. But once they already received a wound, they have to go until they're dead. Okay, so that fixes that problem. Okay, good. Maybe I should read twice and then say once. Saving throws, of course, saving throws are similar to what they were before from the shooting phase, except now cover comes into play. Cover is now a modifier. If the squad is entirely within cover, it's +1. So cover is going to be a huge nerf. There's a huge nerf to cover in this edition of Warhammer 40k 8th edition. Cover used to be like, I'm in cover, 4-up cover all day long, but now it's just +1. And now obviously there's modifiers. So they just interact. You do a lot of math, figure out what they need to roll dice greater to or equal to that. They're alive. Inflict damage. Now, obviously, there's a D. D stands for damage. So certain weapons have multiple damage, like D3, 3 wounds, and if it wounds them, it does that many wounds. So it's pretty crazy. You can kill guys. And then, as I said, mortal wounds. Mortal wounds are nasty. Do not take a wound roll or saving throw, including invulnerable saves, against a mortal wound. Just allocate it automatically. Up next, we have the charge phase. Now, the charge phase is similar, but I'm thinking heavy weapons you can still assault with. Correct me if I'm wrong, people. Let's debate about this. Number 1, choose unit to charge with. Any of your units within 12 inches of the enemy in your charge phase can make a charge move. You may not choose a unit that advanced or fell back this turn. So if they ran or fallen back, advanced is now called run, or ran is now called advanced. Nor one that started the charge phase within 1 inch of an enemy. Okay, there you go, because they're already kind of engaged. So that doesn't say heavy weapons. And what I'm saying is, choose targets. Once you've chosen an eligible unit, select one or more enemy units within 12 inches of them as the target of your charge. Each target unit can then fire Overwatch. Now, it doesn't say that I have to choose a squad that I shot at. So if you shoot and wipe out a squad, you can assault another squad. It sounds like that. Once again, let's talk about these rules. Let's talk about these official rules. But it sounds like that. If I fire a heavy weapon, I can assault. And I can blast out a squad and then assault a different squad. Cool. Overwatch. Now, Overwatch is still really, really, really nasty. Each time a charge is declared, the target unit can immediately fire Overwatch at the would-be attacker. So it now used to be once. Now a squad, let's say you charge some Tau, they blow you out of the water, you try to assault them again, they can blow you out of the water again. So after the Overwatch is complete, of course, you make your charge moves, you roll 2d6, add it together. Go, and obviously you can't move within an inch of anybody that's not declared. If you fail, you don't move. Straightforward. Now here's where it gets interesting. The fight sub phase. Basically, whoever assaults gets to go first. That's it. Whoever assaults gets to go first, and you get to choose which combat you want to go with, basically. So let's say I had 5 squads assault in this turn. I get to choose one. They fight. And then I choose the other squad. They get to fight. And then the other squad, they get to fight. But then my opponent doesn't get to fight back yet until I'm done all of the assaulters first. Then, after all the people assaulted in first go, then it goes back and forth, choosing a squad. They don't have to be in the same combat. You can choose a squad over here first, and my opponent can choose one on the opposite side of the table to fight, and then I can choose this one, and we go back and forth until all the combats are resolved. That is a really interesting change, and it's going to add a really interesting dynamic to 40k, the assault phase. Now, as I said, the weird thing about the assault phase is you no longer lock your opponent in combat. They can just step away in the following movement phase, and then they can blow you to bits. That's an unfortunate side effect. Of course, you'd pile in. You move up to 3 inches towards your opponent. Choose target. So first, you must pick the target unit for units for the attacks. To target an enemy unit, the attacking model must either be within 1 inch of that unit or within 1 inch of another model from its own unit that's itself within 1 inch of the unit. You choose the weapons. Obviously, get the number of attacks. You choose the melee weapons, which have modifiers. Another thing that's interesting is obviously because now Power Claws and Power Fists go at there's no initiative, so they have to go first. They've changed it to the -1 to hit if you use them, right? Because now they're going to go first, basically. They're -1 to hit. Resolve close combat attacks in the same way, the same to wound rolls as that way, and then it's the morale phase. So once again, you choose if the weapon is equal to the toughness, it's a 4. If it's greater than the toughness, it's a 3. If it's more than double or more the toughness, it's a 2, and so forth. And then finally consolidate. You may move each model up to 3 inches at the end of the combat, and then you just keep going. As I said, you just choose. You can't choose more than once, and then if one player runs out of eligible units, the other player completes all the remaining fights one at a time, one after another. The fight is resolved at the following steps. So as I said, that's a really interesting way of doing combat. And then the morale phase. Morale phase now affects everyone, not just if I hurt you. It's even if you hurt me in the assault phase. I think it's not if they're tied in combat, but in the morale phase, starting with the player whose turn it is, players must take morale tests for units from their army that have had models slain during their turn. Take a morale test, roll 2d6, roll dice, add the number of models from that unit that have been slain this turn. If the result of the morale test exceeds the highest leadership, characteristic of that unit, the unit is failed. The test is failed. For each point that the test is failed by, one model in that unit must flee or is removed from play. You choose which models flee from the units you command. Sorry, must flee and is removed from play. That's it. They just die. They run away. Okay. Interesting stuff. As I said, transports can have wounds. It's pretty nasty, so you see the points costs have gone up extremely because there's so much more survival. And then fighting a battle now. As I said, there's a few ways. There's like only war, open play, and it gives a bunch of scenarios for each one. I'm not going to go over really because the rules. There's narrative play, so if you're really interested in narrative play, it's in the rule book as well. There's doing ways with narrative play. They give a few scenarios. As I said, I really can't go over them in too much detail. Another big change is the use of stratagems and command points. Based on how you pick your army, you're awarded a certain number of command points. It's ranging from like 0 to a bunch, and you can use these command points during the game on stratagems, such things as re-rolling things or increasing your chances for other things. And there's a bunch of different stratagems depending on which scenario you're playing. But as I said, there's a bunch of different ones, and then there's some historic battles. What I do like is that there's actually now there's different even for matched play, and that's what I'm going to focus most on is matched play, because that's the one that I typically play games on. There's actually once again there's two types: Eternal War and Maelstrom War. They've had slight tweaks to them, but what I like about matched play is the fact that they've actually added new deployment zones. Of course, there's the standard, Dawn of War, Vanguard, and Hammer and Anvil, but there's actually 3 others now. So there's 6 deployment zones. And now, there's a big change on how the deployment zone is used in the game, kind of thing. And I'll talk about that in a second as well. But, yeah. It's really interesting. What was I saying? Yes. So now, the order to a game, if you're playing like a match game or even really any other game, is first, you roll to place the objectives if there's objectives in the game, right? So the first thing that they do is obviously set a points limit, an army roster, and all that stuff. So, and then there's objectives, but let me go over the exact order because it's interesting. So let's take an Internal War mission, right? This is an Internal War mission. The army is the battlefield, create the battlefield, and set up terrain. Deployment. So the players roll off. Whoever rolls highest determines which of the standard deployment maps is used in the battle. So you get to choose any of the 6 deployment zones. And it's hard to describe the other 3 because they're not standard sizes and shapes. And picks one of the deployment zones on the map for their army. Wow. So that's crazy. You choose a deployment type and a zone. Their opponent uses the other deployment zone, matching accordingly. The players then alternate deploying their units. Now this is a huge change from previous editions where if you won, you get to deploy your whole army first. So this is what happens though. We each take turns deploying our things, and whoever deploys their entire army first gets to go first. So this is going to be very interesting for being like armies like Grey Knights, or even certain armies you can stack it so that you'll get to go first because you can just use really low models on the table. Like a Grey Knight army, I could have 6 units, period. And I could put 3 on the table, deploy quickly, I get to go first. And then turn 1, I can just put my guys on the table and assault. It's nuts. The players then alternate deploying their units, one at a time, starting with the player who did not pick their deployment zone. So starting, like, if you won the roll-off and you decided to pick your deployment zone, I get to go first, placing my first model on the table, my unit on the table. You respond, I respond, you respond, I respond. You do setting up till all units on both sides are done setting up their army. First turn, the player who finished setting up their army first can choose to take the first or second turn. Wow, that's nuts, and that's going to be a huge factor when determining your army size and how you're going to set up on the table. If they decide to take the first turn, their opponent can roll a dice. On a roll of 6, they manage to seize the initiative and they get the first turn instead. Seize the objective, seize the initiative still exists. Battle length, once as always, 5 turns. At the end of turn 5, roll a d6. On a 3-up, game continues. On turn 6, on a 4-up, the game continues. And of course, Slay the Warlord, First Blood, and Linebreaker are still in the game, plus the points. So that's kind of cool. So that's a huge change to how the game will be done, because we could, depending on how you're playing the game with you and your opponent, they could choose different objectives, different deployment zones. And it's also a very interesting factor when choosing your army size and the number of units. You may not get to go first. Now, in the previous editions, it's a 50-50. You roll the dice and get to choose. In this one, it's just literally, if I bring 6 units of Grey Knights, 3 of them are in reserve, the odds are you're not going to have more than or less than 3 units, and I get to choose if I want to go first. That's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. And as always, there are a few other changes to to choosing your army. Now, as I said, there's obviously wow, storm's definitely rolling in. Power might go out. We'll see. Night fighting. So the advanced rules. Now the advanced rules are the core rules plus more rules, and this is how I would typically play my games in 40k. So it talks about Battleforged Army, terrain, expansions like you can use Planet Strike, Battleforged Armies. Now this is where you typically play in a matched game. You'd use a Battleforged Army, dedicated transports. Now with Battleforged Armies, there's different detachments. There's 9 different detachments, and each one sets the minimum number to the maximum number of HQ troops, elites, fast attack, heavy support, flyers, and dedicated transports, and each one has different restrictions and awards different command benefits, mostly command points. So command benefits none for like the patrol detachment, which is 1 to 2 HQ, 1 to 3 troops, 0 to 2 elites, 0 to 2 fast attacks, 0 to 2 heavies, 0 to 2 flyers. Okay, and if you use a Battleforged Army, and let's say you get command points, you can use your command points to choose 1 of 3 stratagems during the game. You can use your points up during the game. If a player has a Battleforged Army, they may spend command points to use the following stratagems in any mission they play. Number 1, this is worth 1 CP, 1 command point. Command reroll. You can reroll any single dice. I wonder if that counts for seize the initiative. Counteroffensive. This stratagem is worth 2 CPs. The stratagem is used right after an enemy unit that charged is fought. Select one of your own eligible units and fight with it next. So basically, if you're worried that your opponent is going to decimate your squad, and he hasn't chosen that one to go first, you can play the stratagem and then get to go before the other squads have assaulted that turn. The next one's called Insane Bravery, 2 CP. You can automatically pass a single morale test. The stratagem must be used before taking the test. There's the Battalion Detachment, which is 2 to 3 HQ, 3 to 6 troops, 0 to 6 elite, 0 to 3 fast attack, 0 to 3 heavy, 0 to 2 flyers, and you can take up to, obviously, this one and the previous one, you take a dedicated transport for any of the units. Restrictions, all units must be from the same faction. Command benefits, plus 3 command points. And so forth. There's the Brigade Detachment, which is 3 to 5 HQ, 6 to 12 troops, 3 to 8 elites, 3 to 5 fast attacks, 3 to 5 heavy support, 0 to 2 flyers. And for this one, all units must be from the same faction, plus 9 command points. That's nuts. Vanguard Detachment. Now this is the one I think I'm going to be taking for my Grey Knights, or if I want to do like Paladin fun list. It is 1 to 2 HQ, 0 to 3 troops, so you don't even need any troops for it. 3 to 6 elites, 0 to 2 fast attack, 0 to 2 heavy support, 0 to 2 flyers. You get plus 1 command point. The next one is Spearhead Detachment, 1 to 2 HQs, 0 to 3 troops, 0 to 2 elites, 0 to 2 fast attack, 3 to 6 heavy support, so this is going to be my Canwall Orc list. Yes! 0 to 2 flyers. Restrictions, all units must be from the same faction, plus 1 command point. Outrider Detachment, 1 to 2 HQs, 0 to 3 troops, 0 to 2 elites, 3 to 6 fast attack, so if you want a fast attack heavy army. 0 to 2 heavy support, 0 to 2 flyers, plus 1 command point. There's the Supreme Commander Detachment, which is 3 to 5 HQs, 0 to 1 elites, 0 to 1 Lords of War. Ouch. Dedicated transports may include 1 for each other choice. Always from the same faction, plus 1 command point. So you can add multiple detachments to get multiple command points for it. The Super Heavy Detachment, which is 3 to 5 Lords of War, Imperial Knights. Air Wing Detachment, 3 to 5 Flyers. The Super Heavy Detachment gets plus 3 command points. The Air Wing Detachment gets plus 1. Super Heavy Auxiliary Detachment is just 1 Lord of War. And a Fortification Network, 1 to 3 fortifications. And there's an Auxiliary Support Detachment, which is like you can take 1 of any of the other things. but it's -1 command point. You lose command points for actually taking that one. Cool. And that's about that. So that's the beginning. That's the beginning of our rules discussion in a nutshell. Saving up all the details. Obviously, no more templates, no more scatter dice, no more randomability. A lot. Like you just choose what turn you want your drop pods to come in. They don't scatter anymore. You just have to place them 9 inches or more away from your opponent. Crazy stuff. And also everyone gets out of 9 inches as well. And that's it for the first video. I really hope you enjoyed these rules so far. I'm going to go over independent armies in future videos and maybe do some unboxings. But that's 8th edition in a nutshell. Very, very streamlined. A lot less randomness. And yeah, what do you think of 8th edition so far? What rules do you like? What rules do you dislike? What rules did I get wrong? Let's create a discussion. Let's talk about Warhammer 40k 8th edition. Are you as psyched as I am? I am very psyched. Let's talk about more rules in future videos. Stay tuned for more videos. Until next time, this is Jay saying, oh, and as always, this is a free content video, so huge thank you to all my Patreon subscribers. Link in the description below, as you can see their names go by my head for my Patreon campaign. So huge thank you to all of them, and a huge thank you for being a part of this discussion. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting.